This week, disturbing footage was released of Israeli Defense Forces gunning down two unarmed Palestinian teenagers when they were simply participating in a protest. Their names were Muhammad Abu Dhahar and Nadim Nawara. And the outright murder of these two boys highlights the impunity with which the IDF operates and raises questions as to whether or not the soldiers responsible will ever be held accountable for the crime. Well, to help tackle the issue of Israeli impunity and the daily struggles millions of Palestinians face daily, earlier I spoke to Miko Peled, son of a former IDF general and grandson of one of Israel's founding fathers. He's also the author of The General's Son. I began by asking Milo to describe his own, quote, Palestinian treatment recently at an airport in Tel Aviv.
There's a sticker that you get as soon as you go in, and the sticker has a barcode and a serial number. And the serial number that starts with a 6 is the one that raises the red flags. That's the mark, yeah. And I've never gotten a number 6. Palestinians always talk about that number, quite often. And so at every point between when you walk into the airport to the terminal until you're actually on the plane, if you're if you're an Israeli, you don't notice. You just go from one place to another until you show up. But when you've got that number 6, they scan the barcode, and as soon as number 6 comes up, then they hold the phone, hold everything, call a supervisor, do a special inspection, do another round of questioning, another round of bag checks. They open the laptop a few extra times. They insisted on doing a body search, which I refused, and I, told them they had no right to. I mean, if they couldn't treat a Palestinian different than they do me, I mean, neither one of us has a criminal record or a terrorist record. Why should we take our pants off?
Yeah, that's insane.
So they had us go through a metal detector a few extra times and that sort of thing, and made us wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. It's just horrible. It's just unbelievable. Yeah. And it only happens if you're a Palestinian.
I wanted to ask you about Rachel Corrie's case. Her parents finally got that appeal. The Supreme Court heard the case today. Of course, we won't hear the ruling for a couple months. What do you think the outcome will be?
I don't think there's going to be any different outcome than what they've had so far. As over the years where we've seen the Israeli army, Israeli police shooting protesters, whether they're Palestinians or not, they're never held accountable. They're never taken to court. I mean, there's a shield that protects the soldiers and the police from any kind of legal action. And the Israeli courts and the Israeli judicial system has always supported the military, has always supported the army, and I don't think that's going to change. I
can't help but think, would we even know who Rachel Corrie was if she was Palestinian? I mean, the only reason we know her name.
Probably not. And also, I mean, we might have known their name, but it would have been forgotten after 24 hours. But I think that her parents deserve, all the respect. God bless them. They're wonderful people. They work so hard, and they're demanding justice, and they're going against the stream and against, the system there.
Two incredible people really fighting on the ground there in Jerusalem constantly. Miko, I wanted to bring this to the horrific executions of the two Palestinian teenagers, 15-year-old Muhammad Abu Dhahar, 17-year-old Nadim Nawara. A horrific footage here of just getting brutally gunned down, merely protesting, just walking around with backpacks. Can you describe the details surrounding this case?
Well, it's similar to other cases where there are protests and the Israeli army shoots to kill. I mean, they shoot to kill. It happened in Abi Saleh with Mustafa Tamimi. It happened, countless times. I remember Mustafa Tamimi because it happened on my birthday a couple of years ago. So it's a day I'll never forget. And they know they're not going to be held accountable. Sometimes it happens during what they call clashes, which are, protests, legitimate protests. In this case, this was both Nakba Day, when Palestinians commemorate their catastrophe, and it was in front of Ofer prison, which is where Palestinians are tortured, interrogated, and held. And we have a hunger strike that began with hundreds of strikers and now thousands. The entire body of Palestinian political prisoners are on hunger strike. So it was in light of all of that, and they were demanding justice, and the Israeli army shoots to kill. They have no fear. And
the IDF has said, even this morning, they were still saying that they didn't have live ammunition. They're opening an investigation. But Miko, you're talking about accountability. I cannot help but bring up this shocking statistic. According to Haaretz, the IDF has killed over 5,000 Palestinians since 2000, 1,500 of which have been children, yet only 6 soldiers have been convicted for these offenses over the last 14 years, according to the Military Police Criminal Investigations Department. And I'm telling you that in those 6 instances, some of them are just a slap on the wrist, 3 months probation, etc.
Yeah.
How is this lack of accountability even possible?
Well, it's possible in a state which is a racist, inherently a racist state, where Palestinian lives don't count for anything. This is the reality in Israel. It's a racist state. It's a racist regime. Palestinians are not counted. Their lives don't count. This is why they're treated the way they are at the airport. This is why they're treated the way they are when they're shot in, whether they're children or adults, it makes no difference, doing mostly peaceful protests. And even if they're not peaceful, then we're talking about rocks versus guns and tanks. This is why Palestinian communities inside Israel, Israeli citizens, are neglected, and over 50% are below the poverty line. It's an entire system. It's an entire racist system. And you did that wonderful piece about Israel being an apartheid state. You hit it right. You hit the nail right on the head. That's exactly what it is. And these are all the different symptoms of a racist apartheid regime.
Let's talk about what Muhammad and Nadim were protesting, which is this insane amount of prisoners kept indefinitely, no charges, no trial. What kind of offenses are we talking about here that could land a Palestinian in jail indefinitely?
Well, what they're protesting now, and what they protested in the past in hunger strikes, is what they call administrative detention, where Palestinians are held without charge. Now, we're talking about the military judicial system, where the bar is set very, very low. Now, these Palestinians, hundreds of them, are held indefinitely, even though no charges have been brought against them. In other words, even the military judicial system, which with its very low bar, found nothing with which to charge these people, yet they are held in prison indefinitely, beaten, tortured, and so forth. So the protest is against that, and it began with several hundreds of them, the actual administrative detainees, on hunger strike, and then after that, about a week or two later, the entire body, some 5,000 Palestinian prisoners, have started a hunger strike. This is a massive hunger strike.
Yeah, and Samir Sawi was, of course, one of the most famous hunger strikers. Yes. He was released, but now his family is being harassed. His sister's awaiting trial. She's on hunger strike now. Talk about that case.
Well, his family's being harassed. She's being harassed. She's very outspoken. She's an advocate for Palestinian rights, particularly prisoners' rights. Samir holds I think, the record for the longest number of days, or the most number of days, being on hunger strike and surviving.
It's insane.
It's insane. I remember I was in Belfast standing by Bobby Sands' grave when Samir was still in jail, and everybody was praying that his fate would not be the same as Bobby Sands and the other Irishman who died. And now she's held in prison. Again, administrative detention. In other words, they can bring no charges against her, and they're holding her. And now the trial has been postponed some 9 or 10 months. And she's supposed to just accept it. Mm-hmm. And the hunger strike is a powerful tool. It's a painful tool. I mean, the pain and the suffering they go through, and their families go through, and the system doesn't care. In other words, the Israeli certainly doesn't care. The Israeli judicial system is not supporting them, and the world seems to not care either, which is even more shocking.
The world seems to just think if you're a Palestinian, then you are a terrorist, or you're some sort of an enemy combatant. Really unfortunate generalization there, Miko. According to a report by the Masawa Advocacy Center for Arab Citizens in Israel, Arab families living in Israel 4 times likelier than their Jewish counterparts to live in poverty. I want you to talk about the factors that you think are contributing to this extreme disparity.
The Israeli Knesset has passed dozens of laws that particularly and specifically target them, whether it's buying land, whether it's development and so forth, job opportunities, you name it. Now, besides that, the whole environment of racism and discrimination in which they live, it isn't always an issue of law. Sometimes just an issue of the reality. So their lands have been confiscated, so they have no room to grow. They have not a single dollar, or you'd be hard pressed to find a single dollar ever invested in anything in these communities. No permits given for them to build. They're restricted in terms of employment and education and so forth. The Israeli secret police is always breathing down their necks. Even crime is not solved. I mean, I was just there, for a few days, and I went to a wedding 2 days before the wedding of a friend in a Palestinian town inside Israel. A man was shot to death in broad daylight. The police will not come to investigate, and this is one out of dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of cases, where the police will not come in and investigate any kind of crime. So this is the kind of neglect, and this is the kind of reality in which these people live.
Author of The General's Son, social activist. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so
Pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
The mark.
Flags. That's the
Mark of
mark,
the
yeah.
beast.
And I've never gotten a number 6. Palestinians always talk about that number, quite often. And so at every point between when you walk into the airport, to the terminal, until you're actually on the plane, if you're if you're an Israeli, you don't notice. You just go from one place to another until you show up. But when you've got that number 6, they scan the barcode.
Of one of Israel's founding fathers. He's also the author of The General's Son. I began by asking Milo to describe his own, quote, Palestinian treatment recently at an airport in Tel Aviv.
There's a sticker that you get as soon as you go in, and the sticker has a barcode and a serial number. And the serial number that starts with a 6 is the one that raises the...
This week, disturbing footage was released of Israeli Defense Forces gunning down 2 unarmed Palestinian teenagers when they were simply participating in a protest. Their names were Muhammad Abu Dhahar and Nadim Nawara. And the outright murder of these 2 boys highlights the impunity with which the IDF operates and raises questions as to whether or not the soldiers responsible will ever be held accountable for the crime. We'll help tackle the issue of Israeli impunity and the daily struggles millions of Palestinians face daily. Earlier, I spoke to Miko Peled, son of a former IDF general and grandson.
And as soon as number 6 comes up, then they hold the phone, hold everything, call a supervisor, do a special inspection, do another round of questioning, another round of bag checks. They open the laptop a few extra times. They insisted on doing a body search, which I refused, and I told them they had no right to. I mean, if they couldn't treat a Palestinian different than they